that we cannot repeat the complacencies that brought us to this day. Our elder statesman, Colonel Okogu, please lead us again. Our efforts should not be in vain. This day should remind us that we will all die, but there is a calling. There is a journey we started. Like this bridge outside that tried to pictorially document the journey of late Sheikh Musa Yar'Adua. Up to a point where abruptly the bridge or the road stopped. We also are facing the same thing. But we will continue to do what he would expect us to do, or what he would have led us again to achieve.
That is aptly themed. Democratic decline, examining the challenges, implications, and future of democracy in Nigeria. But ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget another day. Today, 2 years ago, also marks the midpoint into President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's first term. A term which so far has been deeply unpopular, a tribalistic, non-inclusive, divisive, recklessly run, self-serving, propaganda-fueled, corruption-ridden, hardships inflicting, and state capturing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here for one thing and one thing alone, because we love this country. This country that has given my generation more than we can ever give back. When I tell my children how we grew up, they never believe it. And we all have choices in life. Many of us can go elsewhere, many of us have this and that and that. 99.99999% of Nigerians do not have that choices. And that's why we are in this. Many people ask me, hey, you're a doctor, why are you in this? Why didn't you? And I tell them a very famous pathologist that said, medicine is a social science, but politics is medicine on a larger scale. We see the sufferings of our people. We see the sufferings of our people in hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, in hospital today, for any diagnosis a patient comes to you, the one diagnosis is hunger. If a woman comes pregnant, underneath that is hunger. A child with malaria, underneath that is hunger. In a country of plenty, in a country we know has the potential to take care of everybody just like it took care of us. I tell my children, in my household, there are 3 people we pray for every day after our 5 daily prayers. But when our parents departed, they brought us up well. We were raised well. Our teachers, they taught us well. From the village primary schools we went into the world and competed favorably in some of the best centers in the world. But what that tells you is that leaders of our time invested in us. They invested in our education. They invested in our hospitals. They invested in our security. You could drive from Sokoto, start at midnight, you're going to Port Harcourt. I went to Catholic school throughout my primary school, because my guardian said that discipline in Catholic school was better than LEA. My family was the only Muslim family. from St. George's in Zaria, St. Barnabas in Ilorin, and Holy Family Primary School in Sokoto. This is Matthew Cooper's. We came to Zaria, ABU Zaria. At that time, the university that has the most diverse population, and still does. I went to NYSC in Cross River State, old Cross River State. Served in a Lutheran missionary hospital. I was the only Nigerian doctor, the other doctors were Dutch. At the time, I stopped going to the market to buy stuff. You know why? Because the market women wouldn't let me pay. You see, doctor, you see that doctor? They didn't stop at that. When they saw I wasn't coming, they would bring foodstuff to my house. This was the Nigeria of our time. Today we are told we're different because we pray differently, we dress differently, we speak differently. They want to balkanize us. Those of us that have seen a better Nigeria know we're better than this. Unfortunately, our youth, politicians have infused toxic, ethno-religious cocktail onto our people now. All over the country. There has never been a time. Our democracy, unbroken democracy, is 26 years old, we say today. Ladies and gentlemen, in the life of a country and in the life of democracy, 26 years is still very young and fragile. Our democracy, 26 years of unbroken democracy, has never been more imperiled than it is today. We have a leadership that is focused only on itself. We have a leadership that is disconnected from the realities of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, the current president got only less than 10% of the registered votes. There were 93 million registered voters in a country of 200 million. And he got 8.6. And yet, this president is treating us all like his spoils of war. Like he's conquered us all. There is nothing that imperils democracy more than hunger. There's no military. There is no police force that can quell the anger of a hungry people. None. This government has brought hunger in the land. I've been screaming that because I know I see it in hospital. When I go to Katsina, Medicine Sans Frontières, I go to their feeding centers. You will say, are we in Sudan, Afghanistan, or Yemen? It's a country of plenty. There are 2 or 3 local governments. Medicine Sans Frontières did a survey. Over 30% of their children are all malnourished. God Almighty will ask not only the leaders, but all of us. What did you do when you saw that? What did we do? Did we just recoil in our comfort center and say, oh no, it's somebody else's child? None of us. And I tell even the big generals, there is no country, no people will be safe, will be secure with this much injustice and inequity. None. The same children, over 20 million and counting, that are not going to school, that we pass and think they're not our children, they'll pick up arms and come after us. I went to Kano to buy newspapers one Sunday. I came out to buy newspapers in the morning. Brought out 1,000 Naira to give to the vendor. Somebody just grabbed it. And look, he didn't run. He looked at me and said, "We haven't eaten and you're here buying newspapers." What did I do? Put my hands in my pocket and gave him more. We think we are safe? How many of us, and I tell this to all the generals, ministers and everybody, how many of us after all the sirens in Abuja can go back home to our ancestral land, spend the weekend without these big armed guys? We think we're safe? Nobody is safe if your neighbor is not safe. My grandmother used to tell me, if you pray for your child, pray for somebody else's child. You don't know who he or she is going to meet. Security, our land is drenched in blood. We are burying our dead every day. Civilian and uniformed. Every day. 50 in Plateau, 30 in Katsina, 100 in Zamfara, all over. Life has become nothing. Our military is deployed all across the 36 states and FCT. How many do we have? Less than 300,000. Boko Haram, 16 years today. Bandits, 12 years and count. IPOP ongoing. South, we have halts in the southwest. Elasticity of any military cannot take it that long. The late Army Chief of Staff, General Lagbaja, said it. The soldiers are getting battle fatigued. They are developing post-traumatic stress disorder. Many of them are resorting to drugs. We see them on TikTok. When I went to my retreat in Kuje, you guys know, I was in retreat in Kuje. I was getting calls from soldiers in the war front. Oga, we are seeing this. Oga, we are. Our military is getting overstretched. Security is not the responsibility of the military alone. It's all of us. All this mess you see, security chief, mess you see, created by politicians. The military is calling to clean up after their mess. Politicians are not listening to the cries of the people, are not listening to the cries of those kids, our children in the war front. Those that make it possible for us to come here and talk. They are our children. All across. We need to have an adult conversation, but the politicians are not ready. They are dancing as if it's the economy. When this government came, he said, we're going to remove subsidy, we're going to do this. Okay, good. Well, what plan do you have to ameliorate the sufferings of our people? None. None. And this is what we are seeing. Repercussions we are seeing, all the sufferings we are seeing is because of the misguided policies of this government. And no plan to mitigate whatever the consequences are going to be. No consultations. You want less than 10% of the votes. You don't consult with people, you do whatever you want. People are suffering, you're not listening to them. A governor is saying, my state is on fire. A minister in Abuja is saying he's lying. They're not listening. Even at home. Your child is crying, you don't listen to him, you do that at your own peril. This government, ladies and gentlemen, I've never seen a more reckless government than this. There are over 300 ethnic groups in this country. In a country of over 200 million Nigerians. In a country that we are running a constitutional democracy that protects the right of everybody. Over 70% of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's appointments are from the Southwest, even the Southwest Lagos, violating the Constitution. Where are those who should checkmate him, tell him the truth? The National Assembly. What are they doing? Oh, they are singing, "On your mandate will come." Fellow Nigerians, they are the ones we voted to come and fight for us. They're not doing that. They're allowing the president to do whatever he likes. Arrogantly too, with impunity. He gets loans all over the place. Nobody knows. Nobody's asking questions. What are these loans for? Where are the savings you got from removal of subsidy? During Abacha, we saw PTF. How much money is coming into FIRS? How much money is in the NNPC? What's happening in the CBN? Everything is opaque. As if it's his country. It is our duty and responsibility to raise our voices. That we must do. Not for us, but for our children and grandchildren. And for what this country has given us. We go all over the world, they say, "Oh, did you go to school in England or America?" I say, "No, I went to school in Gusau, I went to school in Abu Zaria." Our leaders invested in us. Now our children, the few of us that have money, we send them to private school. You think they're going to be safe? Everybody else's child is not educated. Everybody else's child is going to pick up guns. If we don't take care of today, tomorrow will come and haunt us. We see that. Oh, and the politics, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm seeing mass endorsement, mass defection. I saw it the other day, and I was telling my wife, am I in North Korea or am I in Nigeria? I mean, this vulgar display of rascality. When people are hungry, you're here rubbing it on us. But we don't need you. You can do whatever you want to do. This is what we're going to do. We have endorsed him for the next 4 years. We've seen this movie before. Abacha was endorsed by everybody. Right? Jonathan was endorsed by 21 parties. What happened? They forgot they needed 2 endorsements. Endorsement of the people and endorsement of God Almighty. They haven't gotten that. So fellow Nigerians, they're giving me a distant 1 minute. I'm glad to be here. I don't want to start crying like my elder brother. He's done that. We have work to do. Religion and ethnicity is not our problem in Nigeria. I wrote it from the beginning, 2020. Muslim ticket was neither for God nor country. It was for self. Everywhere address youth. Do not allow any clarity to come and divide you from religions. Do not allow any ethnic whatever to come and divide you. This is our country. We're here to fight for what is right. We'll go to Kuje, we'll come out. We'll continue to do the good work. Thank you all very much.
To thank the DIS 37 for putting this together. I believe that DA deserves something like this and even more. So much is said of him everywhere, and I agree with the chairman that as a second anniversary, we should have done better. Should have expected a larger crowd. It's not enough the day he went, the whole place filled and everybody, We shouldn't forget that. We can't forget that. And I'm glad that he has called on us to try and put together some Nigerian youths and assist them to join in building this political family so that they can come up with the ideals that stood for, especially in politics. Politics of bridge building, politics of inclusion, both of men and women. He just saw everybody as a friend. He had no enemies. I'm not aware that he had any enemies. And whether you were in party A or party B, he didn't care. He was your friend. It's okay he had a passion for PDP, but he didn't make the people in the other place enemies. He reached out to everybody. He was charitable. In fact, that is one word that Nigerians should not forget him about. As I said to them in the church when I was being interviewed outside the church, he believed so much in evangelization. And his role, the level of evangelization he did for the Catholic Church, and not just that church, bringing people together, the church will never forget him. And that is why they gave him the posthumous award yesterday. And I was glad about it. And even though he was a Christian, he didn't stand just because he's a Christian, he ignored the others. No, Muslims, everybody. Raymond embraced everybody. And he wanted everybody to come together to build a strong, virile Nigeria. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen in his lifetime. But let all of us try and join hands and make it happen. Because if it happens, he'll be smiling in his grave. He will say, that is what I wanted. So I urge all of you to please try and always stand by his family, by his enterprises, and don't let us ignore them. Together we will build a stronger Dar family.
We owe it to our children. I'm happy Professor Yusuf in his intervention has narrated the Nigeria that has given birth to all of us. And all of us were witnesses to that. I had the privilege of serving as president of National Association of Nigerian Students at a time when things were really bad. I know how people can relate, Nigerians can relate with you without looking at your face to check where you're coming from. In fact, our ability to provide leadership leading to a situation where we could rise up and mobilize Nigerian students to protest against structural adjustment program in 1989 was drive based on the spirit that Nigerians have shown love to us, have embraced us across the length and breadth of the country. So coming back to the question you raised, I think the task before all of us, and please, I think this is the message out to Nigerians. We must not wait until things are right before we step into politics. That's the biggest mistake people are making. Once we sit in our comfort zone and wait for things to be right first before we come in, then we should know that we are just allowing those who are now holding the democracy by its jugular to continue to do what they are doing. I think Nigerians must come in, and must come in with the determination. Politics, there are privileges, but the most important thing, people must come in with the spirit to make sacrifice.
Indeed.
I think that is the point I want to stress.
All right, thank you so much.
First is for us to understand this entire concept of democracy. If you ask me, it's about three critical things. The first thing is sovereignty. That's the first. And the question to ask myself is that if we truly look at the way things have gone, does power truly reside with the Nigerian people or with the executive branch of government? No, I just want you to just think about that. That's the first. The second of the tripod of democracy is freedom. In view of the insecurity in the land today, in view of the hunger lack of access to quality education, and all that we're seeing around us, are Nigerians actually free? That's the next question I'd like to ask myself. Are Nigerians actually free? Freedom is not about moving from one location to the other. Freedom is about freedom from want, freedom from fear, and all of the freedoms we can think of. The third of the tripod of democracy is growth or development. And if you look at the indicators, are we truly making progress? Is it in terms of inflation? Is it our debt profile? Is it poverty rate? The fact that that statistics is yet to be challenged. 133 million Nigerians live in absolute multi-dimensional poverty. Our lived experience speaks of hunger. So if you talk about that, that can help you define the kind of democracy we have. Democracy, I don't think, is just about the ritual of elections. That is not democracy. In fact, I'll talk about, and so that's, for me, that's the first issue. The second issue is to talk about, which, of course, Dr. Lukman had spoken extensively about. After 26 years, and particularly in the last 2 years, can we rightly say democracy is on the decline? Is democracy backsliding or not? If we ask ourselves that question, and apostles, sympathizers will tell you that we should celebrate 26 years of holding periodic elections. What they will not tell you is that assessment by both the international community and the lived experience of Nigerians tell a different story. If you challenge statistics, if you challenge data sets that is available, will you also challenge the lived experience of Nigerians? If you challenge the lived experience of Nigerians and say the numbers don't say so, but the numbers say so, and the lived experience of Nigerians say so, so there must be a consensus, there is already a consensus out there about whether there is democratic decline or not. Freedom House in its 2024 report looked at Nigeria extensively. It's a US-based institution and said that Nigeria is not only a fragile state, but that all indicators are not on amber, but on red. If you're not satisfied with that, there's an organization called VDEM, based in Sweden. They too looked at the evolution of democracy in the past 26 years, and particularly in the last 2 years. In their 2024 report, they classified Nigeria as a nation of electocracy, electoral autocracy. And so it's not just about elections, it's about the fact that we have autocracy embedded in democracy. You may not also be satisfied with that. What of the Economic Intelligence Unit? Economic Intelligence Unit looked at democracy in Nigeria. Again, they also classified us as a fragile state. But if you look at all indicators, among democracies in the world, they rated us among the last quartile. And so, these are international organizations. But what of the lived experiences of Nigerians? Is it the poverty indicator? The rate of inflation? Nigerians don't have access to anything. Our National Assembly will know the status of our National Assembly. Bills are passed at light speed without debate. And there are several. I don't know how many executive bills that were sent to the National Assembly that were thoroughly debated and either rejected or passed by the Nigerian people, representative of Nigerian people. Checks and balances have totally collapsed, as you know, and critical decisions are made through voice votes. That's not our constitution. That's not our constitution. I don't know what other indicators. You know that the 2023 elections is the most judicially contested elections in Nigeria from 1999 to date. Not only that, what of the number of persons that voted in that elections? Our keynote speaker aptly captured it. That we are only 8 million Nigerians elected a president, something must be wrong with that democracy. And so I don't think it's in dispute that we are under a democratic regime. However, democracy is not a gift. Nigerians must fight to protect this democracy. Nigerians must fight to ensure that this democracy that was earned with people's blood and sweat and tears will not end up working against the Nigerian people. I think these are my own initial remarks.
Thank you very much. And quite vivid in our minds too. I mean, you said Nigeria is not only in a fragile state, but face, of course, the decline. The indicators are there to show that we're not just in amber, but we're now in red. Let me come to Ms. Enobi. I remember a quote you said the government.
And though we are in his anniversary, but it is important to feel that connection with him, even while you are seated, to have that personal connection, to say, I acknowledge you. And it's okay to also cry if you need to. And so I think anniversary is very, very personal. And with connections with him, he was worried about a lot of things. I'll come back to that question. But he was worried about the kind of conflict that we're having in Nigeria. And I remember chatting with him when he was sending some things to Benue, when the Benue crisis, Agatu crisis, happened. It was personal. But in terms of transformation, when you are looking at the Nigerian state, the Buhari administration, there was something that they did. From the civil society, a lot of people think we just challenge, we just ask questions without even profiling alternatives. I went to study Bolsa Familia in Brazil, to look at the social protection for the lift people out of poverty. A lot of people may think that the 5,000 they were paying meant nothing. If it was not interrupted, for those it was meant to lift, it meant a lot of things in the local environment. And so, but certain things happened in that transformation of trying to lift people out of poverty. We had COVID. COVID came on board. They acknowledged, they had a technical team under the vice president, Shibajo then. They had a technical team, and whatever they did at the time, it was technology driven. Feedback was coming from all over the country, and there was a lot of progress that was being made. And then they created a monster kind of a ministry, which is Federal Ministry for the Humanitarian and Disaster Management and Social Development, which was a cluster. And that swallowed the social protection, the national social protection, intervention that was being done. They pushed it to the ministry. I was the head of ActionAid, that the country director of ActionAid then. And I said, who was I supposed to talk to? Because an intervention is a quick fix. It's not a permanent issue. And then you just throw it to the ministry. And I said, ActionAid at that point could not guarantee the transparency and accountability. When you now want to go and give money to children that are not in school, that we're not going to, because we have to protect our own, transparency and accountability issue. So when you are talking of the progress that is being made, we need to look at democracy from different perspectives. The ballot papers do not have names of people. it has names of political parties. What that means is that you take the responsibility of the political party with you when you are voted. And when you want to step aside from that political party, you step aside from the seat and allow the political party to occupy. Majority of those we have at the National Assembly today have moved from one party to the other, and they're still sitting on their seat. And Nigerians are looking at it as if it's okay. It's not okay. The Supreme Court gave there was an interpretation when somebody tried to maneuver, and the Supreme Court, the judiciary, we have a lot of problems in the judiciary, in ourselves here. The quality of citizenship has depreciated so rapidly. That is what is happening. It's not about the parties, but the people who are occupying the seats. What is your responsibility? Our guest speaker pointed out, he said our children, and I tell them, I was on the set with I think a senator, and I said, as long as other people's children are not free, your children are not free. Because at that time, he also defended and said, the kind of system that we have now, we are, I'm sure you went to school when the Nigerian government gave you accommodation, gave you scholarship, gave you free meals, gave you half chicken on Sundays, and all of that. That was an attempt of investment in the human capital. If you are investing in the human capital, you are not doing the children any favor. You are qualifying the human resources for your economy. And so you are not doing them any favor. But now, those who are in government today, majority of them got scholarships from Nigeria. That is the government planning for its people. What are you giving the people now? You have children of the poor are no longer going to school because when you said over 100 million people are below the poverty line, whose children is in school? We have more public institutions now than we had before. I want to tell you about the school, in terms of public institutions. From secondary school, JS3, many people do not have money to pay for their children. So many cannot move to senior secondary school. There are many people who are in senior secondary school who cannot move out of there because their parents do not have money for WAEC fees or NECO fees. So you leave a cluster of Nigerians below that line. And then you have those who have managed to gain admission through JAMB. Many of them, I can tell you, are not able to even collect the acceptance fees. Many acceptance fees are now 30,000. How many children of the poor can collect it? And then you have a lot of them that are truncated. We have so many individuals that cannot move from 200 level to 300 level. And then from 300 level to 400 level, not to talk of those who are studying medicine. I just want to bring it to us that the responsibility of leadership is in all of us. The responsibility of leadership is how we qualify our citizens. The current leadership is not taking any responsibility for the younger people. And so Dr. Lukman was my president. I was a Nance senator at the time. I was leading the University of Jos, and he was in BUK. And we're all together struggling for Nigeria. At that time, we look at patriotism is a core issue. When you are a thief, you are a thief. You now have thieves that are living in bungalows. And then you have people who steal, just like somebody snatched 1,000 from, our guest speaker. In other places, they will be burnt. But you have thieves, those who are looting mercilessly, primitive accumulation of wealth. And they are leaving the governance of the people seriously, as long as you take your children to go and study abroad. And then many of them bring them back. They are still competing with our children who have no spaces. But it is important to look at yourselves. I know that some people have set examples. We had, and I want to say also that issues of inclusivity, because being the only female in this environment, I want to say that the issue of women representation, women qualifying inclusivity is very, very key to national development.
I should
The
hear an
quality
applause to
of
them,
decisions.
An applause.
They-
That would be good. Thank you.
A man, a woman, and I tell them that a woman ruled you many, many, many years ago because she covered you for 9 months and she raised you delicately, led you to the time you were born, and nursed you to health. We are not in a competition. All we worry about is the lives of our children. We have a volume, a volume of children, because more than 62% of Nigerians are young people. A population is a blessing. That's a gold mine, and we should be able to mine it properly for development. Thank you.
The last talk about inclusion, I think if that's something that High Chief Dokwesi was known for, was very natural, totally committed to women empowerment and inclusion. And also, just a quick point, I think he was a courageous man. I remember when we should do something, people would say, Chief, maybe we should. So he was really a very courageous leader who sometimes, even though he's a rich man, rich men are supposed to be more restrained in action, but he was really very committed, and we cherish his memory all the time. I think democracy is failing in Nigeria, but we should understand how it's failing. All over the world, democracy has challenges, and they differ. So in the US, some people the literature talk about failure, obvious one, military coup. So when military intervene, democracy has failed, obvious. But there's also a failure of democracy where when people elected through democracy now use the form of democracy to undermine democracy, which is a more sophisticated form of democracy failure. Some will argue, some American scholars can argue that perhaps what's happening in the US is a form of democracy failure, where people who came to democracy use democracy to undermine democracy. There's also democracy failure where democracy is no longer returning value to development. So you have a form of democracy, but the Human Development Index is red, growth is stagnated, misery, insecurity. That looks like Nigeria, okay? So even though you have a formal democracy, but the people are not excited about democracy. And that's the danger we have, that whereas the political elite are working hard, but the people seem not to have no longer enthusiastic about democracy because they are not receiving value in economic, social sense. Insecurity. So even if they are poor, but at least they should have some stability. Now, think about the stories coming everywhere. In Enugu yesterday, there was a story of a ritual, this herbalist, whatever. Now, if the children of the poor, not just that they are out of school, but they could actually be predated and killed for ritual killing because there's no effective law enforcement or protection. That is a double tragedy, and that further, reduces commitment to democracy. We've had consistent 10% decline in voter turnout on average every year. So if you look at 2018, when we had like 30-something % participation. In the last election, with all the obedient movement and all the excitement, we increased from 68 million to 93 million registered voters, but declined from 41 to 27%. So if we continue in that way, we might get to next election 15%. The voter registration goes high. That's the irony. People register to vote more. Younger people get to 18 years, they enroll, but they don't vote. So Nigerian democracy failure has two forms I want to focus on. The first form is that leaders are not really responsive to citizens. That's very important. And what triggers that lack of response? In fact, at the end of the day, Robert Dahl, the greatest scholar of political science, says that democracy is actually a process by which leaders respond to citizens. Short and simple. Now, if leaders don't respond again, then democracy has failed. What will make leaders not respond? one of the most important things is that if the process of getting to power is now captured, then the incentive to respond to voters is low. And that's why electoral reform is critical. Now, electoral reform does not guarantee that people who get to power are going to be competent or not. That's a different argument. But it gives two things, which is very important. One, it provides incentive for those who are elected to try their best to respond to those who elected them, because those people can't remove them. Now, what we're working towards now is a process where politicians are no longer afraid of being removed through the ballot box. All these defections are partly based on that. For example, a seat like Akwa-Ibom is a safe seat for PDP. You know what is a safe seat? A governor of a state like Akwa-Ibom under PDP would feel secure, because historically the party is strong and the governor is doing at least fairly okay. A state like Delta should be a safe seat. But what you are seeing now is that there's no longer safe seat anywhere. What the governor of Akwa-Ibom said is that he doesn't want to win an election. Let's forget whether he makes or not. But he said, I don't want to win an election and the court to take it over from me. So two dangers we have now is, for me, first is that the electoral umpire has a history of flagrantly by itself rigging elections. We have to take that as an existential crisis. How do you have an electoral manager who will not by itself, though it's a clear case, no pretense, it was an election that INEC itself rigged. So I'm surprised how well-meaning people will be constructing alliance and everything and not paying attention to this very. Can we have a simple process of a manager of election who at least we can show that when we defeat the incumbent, the result will be clear. The second is the courts. The courts. The courts has been very clear in promoting the idea that once INEC rigs election, we will sanctify it. I don't know about today's outcome, but if you look at consistently from the court's jurisprudence has created the impression that you cannot upset a declared result. And what that creates a fait accompli, both on the politicians themselves and the electorates. Because the electorates see the results come out from the courts every day, reinforcing the idea that once INEC has declared you, no matter the procedure, the court will simply certify it. Kogi was a clear case where the tribunal itself ordered for INEC to provide evidence. INEC provided evidence. It was contested. The tribunal ruled in support of the evidence. They went to address, the tribunal said it was proper. Then judgment, the tribunal said we made a mistake. That evidence shouldn't be there. And the Supreme Court says, well, if there's no evidence, no result. So I want the political class to take seriously this issue of electoral process, because if we don't guarantee that we can upset incumbents, then there's no incentive to continue to come together to fight. That's very important.
Thank you.
And the final point about how democracy fails, therefore, is, I think Lukman is right about party, but I'll put a caveat. You can have well-organized parties that will still not create development. The most organized institutions in this country today, I would say, is IPOB and Boko Haram. They are coherent, they are structured well, and they deliver terror. But, so I want to see political elites struggle with the question of development. It's not just about unity of the party and being organized. I agree with you. It creates stability. You have the president and the chairman of the party. The chairman of the party is strong. He's not going to the airport to escort the president to. But at the same time, I want to hear that the party understands the challenge of development and has created a development agenda. There are issues in this country we have not resolved. I want the list to resolve. First, the issue of nationality. There's still a crisis of who we are as a people. And a political party that wants to change the country must have a clarity as to how it wants to see the Nigerian citizen. That's number one. religion and state, we still have several issues we've not made effort. So I want to say that whereas democracy is failing, what is failing most is statesmanship, the capacity of Nigerian elites to deliberate and craft consensus on development and use it to mobilize the people. Things are bad. In fact, I'm surprised if an incumbent party, this government wins election, because all over the world, even if you're doing well, after 2 cycles of election, one tragedy or other will make you lose election. So whenever you see a country where a party wins successive 2, 3, 4 elections, it tells a story that the electoral system is wrong. Because even if you are doing well, the people will find a reason for an alternative. Because if there's a crisis, terror, attack, poverty, failure of economy, is the incumbent who ought to go. If the incumbent wins, the electoral system is rigged.
All right.
So I want to conclude on the note that the people of Nigeria needs a coalition. But the coalition they want is a coalition built first on defining our problem and agreeing on a change agenda.
Just taking it from where you left it, I mean, you said something really key. You said party should focus on changes, nationality, and who we are. Professor Saliu, a lot about party structuring has been spoken
The
about.
point Dr. Sam made about debate about development of party formation in Nigeria, maybe with the exception of, I am not sure I read much about the formation of PDP in the early days, 1998, 1999, but in contemporary time, no party has gone through the process of debate and generating consensus among leaders like APC has done. And I mean, I tell you, many of us almost saw it coming, because the way in which, for instance, leaders gave in to President Buhari, gave in to his emergence first as a candidate. We saw the danger that the capacity of people to regulate him was going to be weak, and that turned out to be the case. In fact, the point I forgot to make when I reported the conversation I had this morning with the young people from South, the point I made to them is to be careful not to have the kind of prostration young people in the North have after doing what they did to produce President Buhari as president of this country. So I think, and which come back to the last point I made before I handed over, that look, part of the challenge, we allow too much space within the party for people who have nothing more than their own narrow ambition to contest election. And on the basis of that, you find out that once they win, everybody is rushing to lobby for appointment. And the next, we lose them completely. They become tyrants and emperors, which is where we find ourselves now. And my antidote to that is to argue we must encourage. I wish Dr. Sam Ahmadi is active, for instance, in most of the debate we have at the level of the coalition. Sincerely speaking, unless we have people pushing those issues, we end up getting to the point, once we have the party, all that is concerned is how do people become candidates. I think that is the challenge. It's a challenge we must appeal to as many people, which is why I said we must be ready to make the sacrifice. If I say this is the formula to address the issue, I will be lying. But I believe if we have a critical mass within a party, a critical mass of people committed to push issues of development, and people who are not desperate, whose survival is not dependent on appointment in government, then we will say we are on the road to conquering the challenge. But so long as we allow the space so that it's only people who want to contest election and people who surround the person who win election, then we'll stagnate. So I will just end up with that same appeal I made the first time I spoke. I think people have to just roll up their sleeves and just join us. The political space is so vacant. We can't allow it to remain the monopoly of people who just want to contest election. That would be the response.
Thank you very much. And well said. So
through your ballot that they got their seat there, and it is through your ballot that they cannot return or they can return, they are most likely going to be incentivized to defend your interest. So for me, that's the greatest challenge we face today. The fact that legitimacy is not derived from the ballot box. Until we address that, we will continue to hold talk shop. And today, the current National Assembly, if you follow the trend, the issue of reform of the electoral system or amendment of the Electoral Act is not a top priority. It may be on paper that in the legislative agenda it is captured, but it's no way their top priority. I can tell you what is their top priority. The reversal to the old national anthem was passed within hours. That is priority number one. It will be passed in hours. That is a priority. That's how to determine your priority. So, for me, the first thing is, can we deal with this issue of the electoral system? The second one is what Dr. Sam spoke about. The institution that drives that process, INEC. For as long as you have a compromised INEC, please don't expect much. If you also follow the trend of those who are appointed resident electoral commissioners, I'm sure you know, whether we deny or not, that most of them are partisan. They have entrenched interest in the political system. They are the ones who will post electoral officers, appoint supervisors, appoint returning officers, and all of that, whether at the commission level, at the state level. So the election is rigged even before you commence the process. Then when they get to the National Assembly, if you defect, our constitution is very clear on that. If you defect, you retain your seat. And so it's not important that they will stand up for the Nigerian people. And so in summary, to address this issue, first, let's do everything we can to fix the electoral system, to fix INEC. And it is not those who are in government today that will fix it for us. The media has a role. Civil society has a key role. We cannot remain as armchair critics and expect things to change. Nothing will change. Thank you.
Rather than boxing me into the media space, but I can say that though we are in the civil society, we did a lot in terms of supporting the media and capacity building, and also when they are in trouble, that we're out there. Just like when we are in trouble, they are also out there. The Tinubu administration, I remember the last one was the End Bad Governance protest, and a number of young people, more than 20 of them, are being charged for treason. You know, and that is that some of them were saying, okay, to those who were flying, is it another flag? You know, another flag. Many of them were arrested. Some of them are still in jail, or some of them are still finding their ways. I know that some of our people were in jail for about 59 days. And so you are saying, you are talking about, okay, those who are inviting other people or talking about the military to take over, you will charge them for treason. But we have the president of Nigeria who introduced military to River State. Will you charge him for treason, or is he taking us backwards? For many of us who struggle for democracy, and you bring in, you bring in the military from the backside, because a general is a general. That's according to the Nigerian law. If you're a general, you continue to be a general. So we have military rule, and we have a Nigerian president, proposing that. When you have the electoral system, I want to delve with that to say the electoral system, if it were transparent, I think it will encourage a lot of people, like the women, for example. In a system that is draconic, in a system that is so filthy, you will hardly find women there. And that's why we have a decline. Now we have about 4.7% in terms of representation of women in the National Assembly. And the government itself is not even serious when it comes to appointing positions, as if they can't find their daughters. There are some bold ones, some bold states that are making a difference. Because when you have 14 states in Nigeria not having a single woman as a member of the House of Assembly, and they are organizing, they have women committees, committee of women, and it's shared by men. And we have, and so you're having also when you have maternal issues. This is a very serious one on how democracy has failed the Nigerian woman. We still have some Chibok girls, after 10 years, they're still in captivity. We have Leah Shuaibu, who is still there. I got to a meeting in Niger, where they were discussing, the crisis. And we found out that there are more women, more girls, than what we talk about Chibok girls that are in captivity in northern Nigeria. How has it failed? I want to bring us down again to how democracy has failed the Nigerian woman. Because when we worry about our children. When a woman can't have food to feed the children, that's when the crisis comes. During Buhari's administration, before Buhari came, a bag of rice was 8,000. When he was leaving, it was about 30,000. And then the current administration, Tinubu administration, Tinubu came and said, what do you call it? Subsidy is gone over the bar, without any planning, without any laid down anything. You say it is gone. It really was a shock, because policy does not start from the pages of a newspaper. You have to do your planning. What have you planned? And for someone who used to work with the Nigeria Labour Congress, that was my first job. I know that subsidy issue is a fallacy. You can say that, and I think a lot of investment has been done in terms of investigating what happened. And so I see all of it. And where you have, our young people do not have a place to go and work. There's another dimension on how democracy has failed. There are so many young men that are ready to get married, but they can't get married because they have no jobs. Will you give your daughter to somebody who doesn't have a job? Unless you are going to fund them. So I want to come down to say democracy is failing, and that means there are so many young women who are almost at the age of 30. Nobody has asked them to marry them, because their classmates who ought to marry them have no jobs. We have 4 refineries that were working. Nigerians shut down the refineries and they started exporting crude, and then bringing back the refined products. And nothing is being said. Since the issue of refineries, look at how governance has failed. When they now said, okay, you were exporting, so they removed the subsidy, and we started buying fuel for how much now? For 1,000, just take it like it's 1,000. And then there are Nigerian refineries. Dangote refinery is producing, and we are still being charged the same amount of money. Are we crazy or what? Is it okay? It is not okay, and nobody is talking about it. When we start giving Dangote crude, the prices will come down. Nothing has come down. The quality of citizenship, wherever you are, because we are all on a death roll. Every one of us, we are on a death roll. It depends on when you will go. what you are doing in the world, you need to think about it and redress it. When you think of the media, I remember one of the media, a journalist, that at one point we had to rush out of the country because of the threat to life. It is real. Our leaders, whoever speaks, the DSS is everywhere. For me, when I see DSS, when you are holding any meeting, even when we were students, they were all over the place. But my own is that we are Nigerian too. You don't go to a different market. You don't go to a different, we shop together at the main market. You need food. Everybody needs food. And if we don't care for the poor, at the end of the day, we'll also be trapped in the same circle. But inclusivity is quite major, whether it is the media or wherever we are coming from, and a huge contribution to the Nigerian media is that communication by the man that we're celebrating today. Thank you.
For personal gain. We've seen all over the world that corruption is part of human nature, in the sense that democracies are struggling with corruption. But the difference is this. The difference between corruption and impunity, and corruption and a captured state. The theories of corruption would say that there was no corruption when we didn't have difference between private and public. Meaning, if there's no distinction between private and public, there will be no corruption. So, for example, public officers are expected to act in a particular way because there's a distinction between their private affairs and their public affairs. Is that also? When a country's rule-based system has not developed or is undermined in a way that people can't distinguish between
accountability earlier on,
and private,
having a National Assembly that seems like it is, rubber stamped. You were in the parliament at one point.
And that's why rule of law is important.
What's the way forward? Because that is an integral part of Nigeria's democracy, and that is where
we have assumed that people in public office own the public office.
All right, thank you.
So because they own it, we have outsourced to them. We have allowed them latitude to deal with whatever they want. So take, for example, the issue of River State. Of course, the Constitution gives the president the power to make declarations in emergencies. It's necessary. But the Constitution says you have to do that through a procedure. Is that also? And it says legislators have a right to approve, but you have provided for you how to approve it. Now you go and don't follow that procedure. It doesn't matter whether the logic is good. It might be that there's need for emergency or not. But that procedure is important because there's just the difference between your private feelings and the public good. If you don't follow that, that's corruption. So I think that the first thing about Nigerian corruption is that there's a sense in which, when I was in public office actually, I saw that, for example, the computer in the office is your own computer. Is that also? Where you go, you carry it. But it's not your computer, it's a government computer. The even staff belongs to you. You can decide to do with them whatever you like. I think we must see ourselves as operating at a very primitive level of accountability. And it's cultural, not in a religious sense. Cultural, I mean, the norm which we ascribe seems to support this idea of owning the state. So I don't like to talk about corruption because it's not about who stole 5 naira. It proceeds from the concept of how should we relate to the state? How should I relate to a public office? Let me complicate this for you. A legislator goes to be a senator, and he doesn't know that his job is to interrogate, discuss, debate, review. So if it's an insult to review a president's communication, why should we say we should give him this? Why should we reject it? So it's a functionality. Professor Ali Mazuru told us this in MIT in those days. It says, a wristwatch is to tell time, okay? Now, if an African wears a wristwatch and it's asking somebody for time, it means that he doesn't understand the function. I think our problem is that we are not understanding the function in roles we occupy. You have Auditor General of the Federation, he has a job to do. Accountant General has a job to do. You have EFCC, you have ICPC. So, I don't want to sound academic, that's what they call hyphosomic mimicry. scholars say, when you set up institutions to mimic something, but you don't even, the underlying reason, you don't even believe in it. So why have ICPC? Why have EFCC? Why set up auditors if you don't even believe in auditing? There was a Nigerian Auditor General who released under Obasanjo then, who released a report, adverse, and they kicked him out. So this is the conclusion. The idea of corruption in Nigeria is perverse because the Nigerian state is a state that is captured, not by one person, by elites, and they continue to struggle over how to share that capture. So even as we're sitting here now, we have captured Nigerian state. We are looking to capture it and share it. I want to be very straightforward and final note on this. Today, you're talking about election. Today, we had a press conference between Abuja School and NLC and TUC. And the idea was telling them that until you make electoral reform, an industrial crisis, labor union, and a street fight, it will not work. You have to create a popular movement. You don't just sit in NGO. That's my fight with them. I was telling him then, with NGO. I said, INEC would disappoint us because the incentive structure does not permit them. We have to make electoral reform a matter of NLC will go on national strike, TUC will go on strike, the parties, IPAC was there. All of them should be part of a national movement for electoral reform. The problem with Nigeria is that we have a low energy politics. Low energy, elitist. When in a room, we have meeting. The streets, you need to bring high energy politics, where the people themselves are part of the struggle for electoral reform, for anti-corruption, or for anything. Without that way, it will not work. Low energy means they can sidestep it. If you do conspiracy, they do conspiracy. If you hold meeting and attract 3 people, they do their own and vote 3 people. But if you make it a popular movement, where the Nigerian people themselves, labor union, NLC, TUC are part of it, we might succeed.
To make sure that this goes on into the future. Thank you very, very much for coming. Let me also use this opportunity as the chair of this occasion to thank His Excellency Lieli Muke, who's also very much a part of what we are seeing into the future, for coming today. Thank you, Excellency. And to our dear wife and mother, Moji Dokwesi, Chief Moji Dokwesi, for coming all the way from Lagos to part of today. Thank you for representing the family. Thank you to our chairman, Alhaji Mina.